sorry.
Now we are.
There we go. Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Mark Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread on this weekend's ACC College Football Preview Edition, and I'm certainly glad to be back on tap with the guys here. It's been a long while for me. We're putting the Playbook Football Preview Guide newsletter together, or magazine, I should say, and as Jim and the guys say, I've been buried down in the dungeon, but I'm back out now. We're here live, and we're going to talk about the ACC football preview this year, and we're going to do for the next 5 weeks. We're going to do all of the Power 4 conferences, and then we're going to do the group of 5 teams. We're going to follow that up with the AFC, NFC, so a lot on tap coming forward here on Mark Lawrence Against the Spread. And with that, I want to welcome onto our show our legendary expert, Jim Feist from Las Vegas. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Ready for this season. Looking forward to lots of profits, lots of fun, and Super Bowl champions, which I already know who's going to win.
Well, if you check out, I'll know why you did, because you're running to the window right now. Is that correct? You've probably done that already. Andy Iskoe from TheLogicalApproach.com. Andy, it's been a while since we chatted last. How's everything going in Andy Iskoe's world?
Yeah, I believe it has been, Mark and Jim and Greg. I believe it's been since probably the NCAA tournament, which was a good several months ago, 3 months ago plus. Things are going very nicely. I do have a question right off the bat. Well, We'll get into one of the questions later when we get into looking at the conference that we're going to look at today. But the Pac-10, which is basically going to be Oregon State, Washington State, Texas State, and a bunch of schools from the Mountain West. Has it been determined if that's going to be considered a major conference, or will it now be the group of 6 instead of the group of 5?
Well, that's a real good question. I don't think anybody really has a definitive answer right now. Are you aware of that, Greg?
What was the question, Andy?
The new remodeled Pac-12, when they come into existence in 2026, will that be considered a major conference, or will the group of 5 go to group of 6? Because basically it's the Mountain West and Texas State and the Oregon State, Washington State, and it may have some implications as far as handicapping, transfer portals, etc., that we at least would have a year to get ready as to how we want to consider and the things that we can consider about some of those teams during the 2025 season, knowing
I haven't heard that.
Classified.
I think it is like Mark was saying. Yeah, I think it's all too new, and I doubt it. I mean, you just went over some of the teams there. I don't see
when
it.
they add Mogadishu, all those countries. Maybe then it'll be a big.
Maybe. Yeah. So I doubt there'll be a 5th power conference now.
Well, the big burning question, and I have.
Excuse me. By the way, that sets up nicely if it is not one of the a major conference, because now you would just have the 4 major conferences: the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, which sets up very nicely down the road when they finally decide to have a conference football playoff. You'll have 4 conferences. It'll be a total of about 64 teams plus Notre Dame. Works out nicely to have a nice month of December. Instead of conference championship games, you'll have the 4 conferences go through the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the championship, and those will determine the teams, and then you fill out the rest of the field. So just looking ahead.
Do you really believe that's going to happen, Andy?
No.
These teams
Yes,
are going to
I
play
do.
throughout the month of December to do all that?
We're going to 12 teams next year, right?
Yes.
So it's only
12 teams this year.
You mean
right?
16?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there will be 16 at one point. What I'm saying is the 4 conferences, the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC, will end up. There'll be some movement involved, but I think we're going to end up seeing the scenario that I thought we would see. That I thought 25 years ago we would ultimately see 4 power conferences of 16 teams each, which works out to a field of 64. And we might very well have the month of December being where everybody is eligible as you end conference play, and you just see the 16 teams in the conference based upon their results through November.
Wow, it's a lot to be forthcoming here in the world of college football. It's gone crazy.
By the way, Mark, on the top left of your video, you have that little shady stuff going. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
that's better.
Okay,
excellent, perfect.
It was probably reflecting me more in the dungeon than anything.
Yeah, I like it. Is this your new look dungeon?
Yeah,
I like it. One thing, Mark. In fact, I was going to save it, but since we're going to be doing college football for the next month or so, a couple of things come into mind, and I know that your magazine is excellent at it. Some others do it. Remember, years ago, when we would get ready for the season, we only had returning starters, and that was to go on as far as what's coming back. And college football back then was relatively stable year to year. You didn't have all the transfers that we now have through the transfer portal. So basically, you'd have 85% to 90% of the roster from last year, other than those who graduated. And now I'm wondering how we take a look at the magazines, your magazine, the Playbook, which I guess is out right now, and you've done a wonderful job on it, as always. Was it year 32, I think I heard you say last night. But how are returning starters, because this is a handicapping thing that we've used for years. There are two things, and it's come recently, and you included, returning production. My question is, because this will be some of the things that a lot of folks like to analyze, what is the definition of returning starters? Is it returning starters just from last year's team to this year's team? Or does it include returning starters who may have transferred in but played elsewhere? And the same thing would go for production, because if you might have a lot of these schools, if you take a look, like I'm looking at Lindy's, and I've been looking at it for the last month. So many schools now have maybe 11 returning starters, which is much lower than usual. You usually have a number of teams between 14 and 18. They break it down offense, defense, and special teams. So you're looking at basically 24 positions. And I'm wondering, it seems to suggest that maybe the returning starters are just from the program and not including projected starters, which I think would be the more significant term to define returning starters, even if they started at another program and now are projected to be starters with their new program.
Well, here's how we took an approach with it, Andy, in the Playbook Preview Guide magazine this year. Number one, first of all, my tip of the hat to Phil Steele. I rely largely on Phil for the returning starters. I talked with him about what formula it is that he uses to put these returning starters together, and it's rather complex, to say the least, starting with the actual returning starters from the team last year. Then you have all the players that transferred out, left the program, graduated, whatever else. And then you're looking at who comes into the program out of the transfer portal. And those are analyzed. He analyzes those by looking at, were they starters from the school that they came at? If they weren't a starter, they're not even going to be considered to be a starter on this team. But if they were a starter on a team that's transferring in, and they project to be a starter on this year's team, he will include them as a returning starter. So, they have to check a couple of boxes to do just that. I think in its purest form, they're not actually pure total returning starters, but in some sense they are, because they were returning starters with the program.
And that's where the second part of the question comes in, because I believe you get your returning production. Isn't that from a different source other than Phil Steele? And what is the definition of returning production? Because I think as important as starters are, returning production is as important.
I think today, in today's world, I think it's even more important, personally, Andy. Those come from ESPN's Bill Connelly, who does a terrific job. He's their college football guru. Bill Connelly is over at ESPN. And he devised a formula for returning production. And what he starts at basically is calculating how much time not only the returning starters played, how many snaps the players took last year, but also how many snaps the other players in the second and third string teams played last year that are coming back this year. So that's all quantitatively added up together. And then he'll also dig deeper into that and look for performance out of the times and playing time that they got last year. So it's a bit of a
now we'll return it. How does that deal with players who transferred in from another program? Does he now include that with the new team, so that if Ohio State returned 80% of its offensive production, 20% of it comes from players who played elsewhere but are projected to be or projected to play this year for Ohio State?
He does just that. He's looking at how much playing time they had, where they came from, and how much they factor into getting playing time on the team here this year. So, it's Bill Connelly's homemade recipe, per se, if you will. I don't doubt the man at all. Nobody works harder than he does at doing this stuff, him and Phil together. So I feel that in our Playbook Preview Guide magazine, between the listed returning starters that we have and the returning production rankings of where these teams rank in amongst 136 other teams, you get a good feel or good flavor for what these teams are going to be bringing back this year. My first go-to is the returning production rankings. And the reason I say that, we're going to go through the ACC in just a moment or so. I'm going to share with you something really, really noteworthy about these returning production rankings, but we'll hold it out for just a minute or two.
If you have a player that's second or third string, say with an Ohio State,
yes,
and he leaves that schooling goes to, say, Ball State, which is a much lower ranked school. But that player from Ohio State actually might be a more talented player than Ball State's ever seen before because they don't usually go to that school. How do you calculate that into the returning starters and the effectiveness?
That's a great question because it's the back end of the question Andy asked of the players that were at group Power 4 schools and then go down to group of 5. You don't find too many group of 4 athletes that transfer to a
Group
Power
of
5 conference per se. That's taking the huge step backward. I don't think a lot of those are going to do that, but if they do, my guess is as good as yours, Jim, is how they approach that. I mean, a guy who's a second stringer at Ohio State, they probably look at how much playing time he actually got, how many snaps he actually took, and where he'll fit into the program here that he's going to now.
You would think, by the way, that because he transferred down, he will be projected to be a starter at Ball State, or he wouldn't have transferred if he did. Obviously, a training camp performance will have something to do with that. So I would think that his production, especially in the production numbers that you have, Mark, for Ball State would include what he did at Ohio State, whether or not he was a starter at Ohio State. Most likely he wasn't and wasn't going to be, which is why he's no longer there. And those would be included in the returning production for Ball State because that's what he brought in. And in fact, it would be nice, and I know it's a difficult task for Bill Connolly to do, but I think it would be great to have, when you have returning production, how much of it is from within the program and how much of it is from outside of the program, from another program.
Well, that's really breaking it down deep, Andy. And I don't know if anybody out there is doing that or is willing to want to do that because that takes a lot of time to do all that.
It's easy these days because basically when you're looking at a transfer in from another school, you're going to put his returning production somewhere if you're going to include it, and it's just which column do you put it in? Ohio, current school, previous school. But this way you will get if a team has, let's say, 80% of its return of returning production, but 60% of that 80% was from outside the program, that's a lot different than if 60% was from within the program, where there's greater continuity if 60% is returning from the same team last year to this year, as opposed to that 60% being from people who are getting assimilated into the new program to which they've just transferred.
Well, all I know, it's their Betty Crocker recipes, and they're not going to give away that recipe, okay? And I'm sure it's tweaked a lot.
They will let you eat the cake. They won't tell you what the ingredients are.
Exactly right. If you like the taste of it, we've got more coming up here sooner than later. Okay. Hey, let's get into the ACC football conference this year. Last year, they performed better than they were expected to. They were bottom tier ranked, the 4th out of the 4 conferences, and they surprised, I should say. Not so much performed better, but they surprised. And we're going to take this thing all alphabetically, guys. And I'll bring up a team. I'll mention what their odds are to win this particular conference. I'll share some returning starters and returning production numbers. And then we'll go around the horn and see what our takes are on those particular teams. First guy is Boston College. The Golden Eagles, they're under Bill O'Brien. And I think he's the biggest asset to that football team is the head coach, Bill O'Brien. He's a quarterback guru, if you will, per se. He lost his top quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. He transferred to Florida State. So now he's got to rely on Grayson James to take over the helm there for Boston College. They've got 16 starters coming back, or I should make that 13 starters, 6 on offense, 7 defense. And they rank number 39 overall in returning production rankings out of the country. They're plus 800 to win the ACC. Any thoughts or ideas from anybody on Boston College and what you take for them to be this year?
I will say, Bill O'Brien, he's got the NFL pedigree as well from his days back in the league, coming over from his success at Penn State a number of years ago. And I think that is an attractive recruiting. I'll see how it works with North Carolina with Bill Belichick as far as recruiting goes, but that's a subject for later in the show. But when we get to North Carolina, so I think that's going to help in recruiting overall. Let's see, last year what were they? They were 7-6. They lost to Nebraska, I believe, in their bowl game, if I recall. 8-1 does seem awfully short odds, but maybe those awfully short odds are telling you they expect great improvement.
What did you say there, Eddie?
What's that?
What did you say?
Didn't Mark say that? Didn't Mark say 8-1?
No, 80.
80.
Okay, 80 to 1. Okay.
80, right.
8,000. Yeah, not 800. Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was saying 8 to 1 seemed very, very short. So that makes the rest of my comment not necessarily, because if it were 8 to 1, it would say there's a lot of positive things. I do expect Boston College to be improved with O'Brien's having had the 1 year to get familiar with the personnel that he inherited, that's still there, plus the guys that he's added. I think the best way to handle Boston College this year is I'm probably going to look to play on them against the spread, especially in the early part of the season. They ended the season very well last year, winning three of their final 4 regular season games after I think it was about a 3-game losing streak. And I think that's not surprising, because you would expect with a first-year coach with the pedigree that O'Brien had, that you would see improvement over the course of his initial season. And that's pretty much what we saw. And even the close bowl loss to Nebraska was a way to end the season, generating some optimism for this year. So I think that we're going to see continued improvement from Boston College, but I think the best way to take advantage of that improvement will be on a game-to-game basis. I don't see this team. I don't know where you have them, Mark, but I see this as being a bowl team again.
Well, I would say for all intents and purposes, our preview here is all basically largely on a game-to-game basis. Betting futures, I am not a huge futures player because I like to bet the teams on a game-to-game basis. I can see their production, everything moving forward like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Boston College does or does not go bowling this year. I think they're an iffy team right on the border. But Jim, if you or Greg have anything to say about these, feel free to jump in.
At this point we have, I think, 2.6 minutes per team. There are 17 teams in the ACC. Okay, so we got to start flying. I think we're good. Yeah. Look, the bottom line is Bill O'Brien is the university, the football team right now. Yeah. And you just got to trust that he's going to elevate the team, and just got to see if he can do that or not.
Okay, we're going to put the wings on right now. Hop over to California under one of my favorite head coaches, Justin Wilcox. We mentioned his games are rarely dull, if you will. Last year, 4 of their 5 losses were 1-score losses, and in fact, mark this stat down. It's terrific. California, a point spread champion in margins. They're 16-2 against the spread and 1-score losses. And if he continues to keep games close and 1-score defeats, you're going to have to look at this guy as an underdog as a head coach. He's also, California, a perfect 11-0 to the spread as a conference road dog against a Power 5 opponent. Mark him down, Justin Wilcox, a really good-looking underdog head coach.
And by the way, Mark, did that include last year? Do you remember what because again, they made the move to the ACC. Some people might say, well, Pac-12 and ACC. Well, I would actually think Pac-12 is a lot better than the ACC the way things have gone lately. But
the old Pac-12.
The old Pac-12. But I'm assuming that continued, that they were still very good as a dog last year in conference?
Yes, they were as a dog in the conference, but especially in these short 1-score games. You're looking at him, if he's a dog of less than 10 points, then you're going to factor that into your handicap and think that perhaps if Vegas is right, I'm going to look at him to be a dog in a 1-score possibility of a type of a football game. I don't think it's any different for him. I like Justin Wilcox real well, and he proved that last year the travel coast to coast did not bother this football team here. I got to keep a strong eye on California to be a major surprise team this year. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of what we talked about.
By the way, I will agree with your assessment on Cal. I would also suggest that just getting back to Greg was talking about the comparison, I think we have seen over the last few years a steady decline in the overall quality of the ACC. Forgetting the 4 new teams that joined last year, a lot of it had to do with Clemson ending their Mark, the number of their double-digit win seasons. And I think based upon what we see coming back this year for a number of these ACC teams, we may see the overall the conference trend towards weakness continuing, with some of the key programs I think suffering too much losses from last year.
And also a very big addition for them transfer-wise. Their top 2 transfers were quarterbacks, including Ohio State's quarterback. He hasn't played a lot, Devin Brown, yes. But anytime you can get a quarterback from Ohio State, that's going to boost up your roster. And they got also a transfer quarterback from Oregon.
That's sort of what I was alluding to before. When you get a player like that from a big team,
yeah.
how much does that boost? And if he hadn't played much, you really don't know because it's so much speculation involved.
But then
Yeah, you would think that a transfer from Ohio State to Cal is an upgrade for Cal, significant upgrade for Cal.
no question. He would have likely been a starter at Cal had he not been at Ohio State. I think that's the bottom line, the answer here. So they're not going to take a step at all backward at the quarterback position. Let's go over to Clemson, guys.
11-0, Mark.
I'm sorry?
Point you brought out, 11-0 is an underdog on the road.
In non-conference games, yes.
That's an incredible.
That's a pretty strong number under Justin Wilcox. That's pretty strong.
Stat for people to follow and to look at and definitely at least initially bet on.
For sure.
And that has about 90 to 95% to do with the coaching and the coaching staff.
No question.
That kind of performance as an underdog.
Clemson Tigers, guys, the team to beat in the ACC this year. The amazing thing about this team is, despite a loss to Georgia last year, they still managed to bounce back with their 14th double-digit winning season in the last 15 years. That's phenomenal, and that all goes to Dabo Swinney and the job that he's done with this program here. Look out for Clemson this year. I've got Clemson playing in the championship game this year, not just making the playoffs, the championship game. They got a quarterback in Cade Klubnik, who's the real deal here. He's now in the third year with the program with Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator, the same coordinator for now the 3 years in a row. This kid is vastly improved. They're head and shoulders the best team in this conference here, but they are also number one in the country in overall returning production. And the reason I'm calling that out is the fact that teams, if you go back and you look at these overall returning production teams, get your playbooks out, your preview guide magazines out, and look at the teams who are ranked number one overall. They are solid gold money winners. And that's exactly what I project Clemson to be this football season. They'll be the team to beat. Nobody's going to beat them. And I see them making it to the college football championship game this year.
Now, when you say they're winners, are you talking against the spread or on the field or both?
I'm talking against the spread.
Mark,
Okay,
do you believe that Klubnik is a quality quarterback that can go to the next level? Is he that good?
No, he will go to the next level. I don't know what the Heisman Trophy odds are currently, but I do know that he'll be in amongst the top five. Okay. And if you're in amongst the top five in Heisman trophies candidates, you are a quality quarterback. At least
that tells you a lot about what people that are in the upper level scouting think of him, and that's why I brought that up.
Yeah. By the way, Mark, because it does suggest if those numbers that you quoted before about the number one returning team production, you're also going. What makes that impressive is that those teams are also going to be laying bigger numbers than they might otherwise be laying, because everyone will see, or the big money bettors are aware of the returning production, and they're going to be laying big numbers most of the time. But that won't scare away people if based upon the success. So you may be laying some big numbers with Clemson, and I know most of us don't like to lay big numbers, but that result that you just alluded to, Mark, suggests that maybe a team like Clemson this year or other top five.
Yeah, after they win 3 or 4 games by 40 or 50 points, I think the numbers, they're going to become oblivious to the numbers, really. Let's keep the ball rolling, guys, because we got to get a lot in a short amount of time here. Hop over to the Blue Devils here. They're coming in here. Only team in the ACC last year or the last 3 years with more conference wins than Duke has been Clemson and Louisville. They're really a sleeper. They've really done a nice job the last 3 years in conference play. My concern to them this year is they got a stretch of 8 straight games against bowl teams from weeks number 3 through number 9. And that will decide whether or not we'll be talking about Duke in a college bowl or Duke sitting at home with us and watching teams in a college bowl. But here's a great stat I'm going to throw at you guys. Manny Diaz, former head coach at Miami, now at Duke, in his career as a single-digit underdog, a competitive underdog, he is 10-1 against the spread. So you keep that thought in mind when you're looking at the Duke Blue Devils this football season here. Not real strong when it comes to returning starters, only 7 on both sides of the ball, number 53 overall in the country. But I'd be stunned if this team is not bowling.
Yeah, the key for Duke is going to be the addition of Darian Mensah. Very exciting looking quarterback from Tulane. And Mensah's a kid that has NFL potential. So that was a big get for Duke. And like you said, Manny Diaz did a phenomenal job with the team last year, and he did not have a quarterback like Darian Mensah. So Duke could actually be a nice little sleeper team from the ACC. I believe they're like 6th, I think, somewhere around there. They're in the top 8. overall for sure.
Yes.
As far as division futures are concerned.
And if you look at the results last year with Manny Diaz, it was first year last year. Look at their losses: Georgia Tech, a bowl team; SMU, champion at Miami, lost to Miami, bowl team, and even in their bowl game, a very good Ole Miss team. So, coming in from outside the program and doing the kind of job that he did last year suggests that Duke might be a team. If you're looking for a long shot, maybe Duke is the team. What are their odds? 25 to 1 to win the conference.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a pretty nice little take.
And I really like the kid Mensah. So now more people are going to see him because he's now in the ACC as opposed to the AAC. That's a big jump up as far as marketing wise. And if he has the season that hopefully he has the ability to have, Duke could be a nice sleeper.
I got to say this about Manny Diaz before we go over to Florida State. He was long looked at as a Peter Principle type head coach, great defensive coordinator. Maybe rose to the level of incompetence. He couldn't quite handle being a head coach, and he proved it. But boy, he's really turned things around here at Duke, and I got to tip my hat to him. I don't know if it's experience, confidence, recruiting. I don't know what it is, but Manny Diaz has turned the corner. The guy who has not turned the corner has been the head coach now at Florida State. Is it
maybe another case of Peter Principle in the other direction?
It may exactly be.
He had success before he got here.
Yes, he did. Where was he at?
One of the Mountain West schools.
Yeah, a Mountain West team.
Are you talking about
Norville?
Yeah, Memphis.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think he was also in the Mountain West before Memphis.
So, he's going to be a little bit on the hot seat here. I know 2 years ago they were undefeated and they thought they got jabbed by not making the college football championship where they needed to be, but they didn't, and they got drilled as it was in the what it was, the semifinal.
That's because the quarterback was injured, as we all remember, and then everybody basically decided to take off and not even play in the game. Yeah, and they got destroyed by Georgia.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and ever since then, it's been a black eye.
But he's gone out and done what he needs to do this particular football season here. He's gone out and he really banged the transfer portal here. He's got a lot of great offensive linemen coming in here. He stacked the offensive line with 4 huge starters that are coming in here, a total 105 starts. He also hired 6 new assistants, one of them Gus Malzahn. That's a pretty nice addition for an offensive coordinator for a football program like this. I see Florida State making a U-turn this year. They can't be as bad as it's been here for this football program in the past here. And I think they have to be respected this year. I'm going to take.
What's their returning starters and returning production?
Well, they've got 9 starters offense, 6 on defense, and they rank number 54 in the country. But what's nice about them and every team in this conference, it appears to be, Andy, is every team in the conference ranks real high in returning production rankings, meaning that they're bringing a lot of 2 and 3 deeps back to almost every team in this conference here. They're going to be I think a much vastly improved conference, largely because of where they rank in returning production.
No, it's interesting I mentioned that because, again, looking at some of the mass media magazines like Lindy's, they show returning starters for Florida State 3, 0 on offense, 3 on defense. So what you're showing are the projected starters from other outside the program, or starters that may have been close to playing starting time for Florida State last year that are not included in the Florida State in the Lindy's magazine, which probably made you go nothing more on just statistics.
Yeah, well, let me say this: publishing the Playbook Football Preview Guide magazine, I know what a chore it is to get this thing out, and the biggest chore was finding out now in this world we live in is how much effect the transfer portal is going to have. Who's in?
And
who's
spring
out,
and spring practice too.
Exactly. And the one thing about Lindy's magazine, it's been around a long time and I do read it, he goes to press too early. And just as you mentioned, Andy, 3 starters on offense, none on defense. You go to press way too early. That information is useless. It might have been then when he went to press, but I don't think it's anything that you really need to put any much confidence in. I'm not bashing him. I like the magazine.
No, but it's important for people who are using it as, if not, they should be using the playbook as, if you're betting football, they should be using yours as your as primary source of what we like to call actionable information. So you that's why you want to sometimes check different sources. But you're right. Some of these magazines come out sometimes with information from prior to spring practice.
Here's one great nugget on Florida State before we move on, guys. Here, these additions that Norvell brought on into the coaching staff: Gus Malzahn, offensive coordinator, offensive line head coach, Herb Hand, and Norvell, when they were all together at Tulsa. This is amazing. They broke NCAA record when they were all together, all three of them, with a 5,000-yard passer, 3 1,000-yard wide receivers, and a 1,000-yard running back. And they're all together here right now.
Was that all in one season, or was
all
that
in
over
one
the
season? Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Now they're all together here at Florida State. You have to look at this team as being vastly improved this football season, if for no other reason, what I just mentioned.
Yeah,
what
just
are their
so you can
odds?
See here, this is the our lads depth chart, and all of the players in orange are the new players. Those are the transfers. So as you can just see from the starting lineup right there, 8 out of the 11 are transfers.
Wow.
There you go.
And then that's on offense. And on defense, you've got 4 out of the top 6 on the front line are also transfers. So that's a lot of newness, in which they needed because they were pretty bad last year.
And Jimmy, I know you'd love to get into this conversation and us go deeper, but time's not going to let us.
No, I understand, but that you guys do a lot of depth and a lot more depth in college.
Oh, by the way, with what you just mentioned, Greg, and I'd like to get Mark's thought on this, Florida State opens the season at home against Alabama. With all the returning, I haven't seen the line on that one yet. It's got to be significant.
There was a line up for that. I saw it, but I don't remember it. I'll have to go find it.
Is Bama a double-digit favorite?
Well, it'll have to be.
Oh, they have. Yeah, they have to be.
Have to be.
I do you know when the game is? Is it the first weekend or the second weekend?
It's the second weekend. It is the August 30th.
They are a 12.5 point favorite, Alabama.
And that's on the road.
How big are they?
It shows 12.5.
Okay.
And it shows that, it's actually either a neutral site or Florida State's the home team.
It shows Florida State as the home team.
Alabama as well. You know, the dumper that they went into last year, that big coaching hire that they made last football season here. So it's huge for them to get out. That's going to be a great game to watch. And I think personally, Florida State's going to take that team right down to the wire in that first football game.
Let me ask you this question about, because again, and we're taking some questions now because this is the first conference preview, so we won't be repetitive if we look at it now. You look at Norville's record at Florida State. He's been there 5 years, 33-27. Considering the quality of recruiting of the athletes that comes into that program, could you say, and we talked about Peter Principal a little bit, could you say that maybe he just hasn't gotten as much out of the talent that he should have gotten, and maybe perhaps we are expecting too much from the talent that he's inherited this year or brought in this year based upon his lack of expected coaching success in recent years?
Well, that's a great question. I think it'll be answered this year is what it'll be.
Yeah, I think the problem is that when you look at it, it's unfortunate what happened last year, but everything was building up because when he came into the program, they weren't very good. So he comes in and they start to slowly get better. And then they have that huge year when they had all of their veteran players. Then they just miss out on the playoffs because the quarterback gets hurt. Otherwise, they're in the playoffs and they might even win a national championship. The very next year, the quarterback's gone, everybody leaves, and it's just not a good year. It's the first big year of transfers. He brings in a transfer quarterback who stunk, and it was just a really bad year. So I think he deserves one season for the benefit of the doubt to see if he can pick things back up again.
Let's talk about another head coach here, guys, over at Louisville, Jeff Brom, another quarterback whisperer of a head coach. He's done a great job. He loses Tyler Shugg in the draft, second round, the 40th pick of the draft, but he brings in Miller Moss from Southern Cal, and that's going to be a huge, nice pickup for him. He's going to benefit from that. You've got a football team here in Louisville that is always ready to play football. This great stat about Jeff Brom himself. His teams, when they put up 30 points or more on the scoreboard, they are 70-19 straight up, 55-30-1 to the spread, and as a dog, 19-4 against the spread. You don't want to be fading or laying points in this Louisville football team.
What's their offensive production returning?
With the shaky defense. Number 57 overall, Andy.
All right, that's not quite top third, but pretty close.
Yes, it's close enough, to put them under consideration. Let's get to Miami of Florida.
By the way, just so you know, Mark, you skipped over Georgia Tech.
Okay, let's go there real quick. We'll talk about Georgia Tech here real quick. Okay, we mentioned Georgia Tech. They're going to close out the season with seven straight bowl teams this year. They rank number 18 overall in overall returning production, this football team does. But they've also been really weak against weak opposition here. They play down to the level of opponents here, and you have to be aware of that. Maybe they might get up for these 7 straight bowl teams they're going to close out with. But, they're 12-1 this football season here to win this conference here. I'm not going to be on them, but I think they have to be respected.
Well, I wanted to mention it for sure because I really like what they have at the quarterback position. Haynes King is a difference maker. We saw that the last couple of years when they played Georgia.
Yes.
We saw that when they upset Miami. He is a big time college football quarterback. They don't usually have that at Georgia Tech. So I think there's talent there, but the next step has to be made where they have to be a little bit more consistent. They just can't keep having these like really big wins, which is great, but they need to start being more consistent and win a lot of those games that they haven't been able to win against those average teams that are in the same boat as they are. But I think this could be a big year for them if everything comes together because Key has done a really good job there as the head coach.
We'll find out early on September 13th. They host Clemson.
Yes, big
That'll
game.
be a good.
They bring in a
tell.
rare 5-star recruit, guys, this year. Offensive lineman Josh Petty, one of the most talented offensive linemen in all of football. And this is going to make this offensive line for Georgia Tech the best that they say they've had in decades. So Greg may be onto something here with Georgia Tech. You got to put them on your watch list for
Well, they
sure.
have a pretty good quarterback there with King, right?
Yes, on top of it. Yeah, exactly. You give them some protection, they're going to be in the mix. NC State, North Carolina State, number 40 in overall returning production, 16 returning starters. They took a bad loss to East Carolina in the Military Bowl, and it cost Dave Dorn his job. What it cost him was he had 12 winning seasons in 15 years. He's been around a long time, a very respected head coach, if you will. This is a football program that I don't know where I'm going to go with this team. I really, truly don't. 16 starters coming back here. I don't like the way they closed out the season. They're going to have to open up, obviously, better than they did last year. I've got them.
Just so you know, we are going to have their analyst here for our network here at Proline TV. And that is going to be on, it's going to be next week on Wednesday. So tune in on Wednesday. It'll be live in the afternoon. I think it's going to be at 4:00. So we're going to talk North Carolina State football. So if you're an NC State fan, you want to find out about that, tune in.
Over to North Carolina down Tobacco Road.
I can't hear you. Is that me?
No, I hear you fine, Greg.
No, Mark.
He may be a little bit. He needs to up his volume.
Yeah, we lost your volume there for a second, Mark.
All right, can you guys hear me right now?
If you're very low, it's like
very low.
Yeah, like something just got knocked out of your audio or something.
Okay. We'll have to do this.
That's a little bit better. It's coming back.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good.
What I have to do is get this thing up.
I wanted to butt in here a little bit.
Yeah.
Alabama opened a 12.5-point favorite on the road at Florida State, up to 13 and 13.5 in some spots. Only bet 365 dropped it to 11.5. The total is pretty consistent at 50.5.
Okay. What's after NC State?
My thought there is with all that new talent coming into Florida State to open the season against a team like Alabama, it may be very difficult to get a good reading on Florida State based off of that game. So my hope is Alabama crushes Florida State in that first game, and then we play Florida State in their next couple of games.
Well, don't forget what happened last year in the opening week when Georgia demolished Clemson.
Yep.
And then Clemson went on to have a pretty good season.
Exactly. We'll see thing here.
Let's talk about a team getting a hard handle on this year. How about Bill Belichick in the world of college football making his debut with North Carolina? We're going to probably hear more about his girlfriend than we are him.
Well, she's much better looking. We should talk about
that. That's the one that you thought I slipped on, and I did it deliberately the other day, Jim, when I said we were going to hear all about his granddaughter all year.
What are we going to get from this football team here? He's got no college coaching experience, but he does bring in a transfer quarterback, Gio Lopez from South Alabama. And this kid's got some numbers and this kid's got some game. So that's going to help him out mightily this football season here. But it's Bill Belichick. It could be a home run. It could be a strikeout. We don't know.
How are the kids going to respond to his style of demanding precision, demanding decorum and things like that? How's that going to relate to 18, 19, 20-year-olds? How are they going to relate to that?
It's just my way or the highway, and we're going to find out, whether or not this team is going to step up and want to play his way.
The thing is, though, if they have intentions to go to the NFL,
yes,
no better coach to have.
Well, that's the same thing with Boston College and Bill O'Brien, the NFL connections.
Two NFL head coaches, Belichick amongst.
And they have they have a general manager there. Well, I can't remember his name. He worked Veasan for a while. Mike, I can't remember his last name. Famous. It slipped my brain.
Lombardi. Michael Lombardi.
Yes. I mean, these guys have been around at the pro level.
Well, I don't know what we're going to get. All I know is when Bill Belichick was a double-digit underdog with New England, he went 9-1 against the spread. If this team sputters and stammers and ends up being a big double-digit underdog at any football game this year, you got to kind of make a case for Bill Belichick in that rare role.
By the way, you skipped over Miami.
Okay. Mario Cristobal, my guy, who
yeah. Was that on purpose? Not on purpose?
It may well
one of those deals.
Subliminally.
Yes.
Even though they're one of the favorites. They're one of the favorites this year.
They're 38-1, number 60 in overall returning production, 15 returning starters coming back. They led the nation with 6.95 yards per play last ball season. They had basically 70 explosive plays. Those are big gain plays that they led the nation in. And all three of their losses last year were by only 10 points combined. If it wasn't a Mario Cristobal coach team, and I'm telling you these numbers here, I'd be telling you, look at this team. They play these close call competitive football games. But believe me, he finds ways to lose more games than he wins. He's got Carson Beck as his quarterback. He was a co-favorite for the Heisman last year. I think Beck's going to be a little bit overrated. Personally, you're not going to get a lot of good things out of me about Miami of Florida this year, even though they're in my backyard.
Now, Notre Dame opens on the road with them on the 30th of August. Notre Dame's open 1.5. They're up to 3 in many places. The total is 53.5.
I like Notre Dame.
We're going to learn a lot about Miami in that particular football game.
We'll get to Notre Dame in a few weeks, but
and you hit it on the head, Mark, with Carson Beck, because he really has something to prove. A lot of people in Georgia maybe not missing him as much as you would have thought just a year prior when he was like a big deal there. So I don't know. I look, a lot of it's
somebody got lost.
I actually think there's a chance that he might be able to prove people wrong, but we'll see. I mean, he's got talent, and it's going to be a big season for him.
A $4 million expenditure for Miami. He laid up a lot of money for this kid. So,
well, Greg's mentioned a very important thing. When you go from Georgia down to Miami, that's generally considered to be an upgrade for Miami. Notwithstanding the fact, this is unusual. I don't know if it's an upgrade from Cam Ward, but normally when you go from Georgia to another school, it's generally an upgrade to the school. But maybe there was something that the folks in the Georgia program noticed about Carson Beck that maybe suggests exactly that we don't know, and maybe he was a bit overrated, and maybe we'll find that out, considering you have to think, and it sort of alludes to your point, Mark, that you have to believe he's getting a downgrade in coaching.
I believe he is. Okay, let's squeeze the Pitt Panthers in here, guys, and what freaks they were last year. They opened up the season unbelievably 7-0, and they lost 6 straight games to finish the football season here. That's really rather rare to find a football team that did just that. I happen to feel Pat Narduzzi is going to have this mammoth chip on his shoulder here this football season here and look to shake all that bad publicity. They're 50-1 to win the conference this year, and I think they're going to get a lot of love this year, if for no other reason. They're number 33 overall in returning production, 16 starters back. Any observations by you guys about the Pitt Panthers?
I have a question for you, Mark. Maybe your database has something since it goes back so far. How teams that have a similar profile as Pittsburgh, not identical, but let's say they were 3-3 or 4-2, 2-4. Well, let's say 4-2, 3-3, and then they lose the remainder of their games, including a bowl game. How they do the following season, assuming the same coach returns, which may not always be a good assumption.
Well, that's a great study. I'll do that, and I'll be reporting it in in the Playbook football newsletter, especially in time for their first game. So I will mention that Andy Isco asked this question on the ATS podcast.
As opposed to looking for the information himself, which I'll probably end up now doing.
Yes, you will. And if you find it, slip it over.
I'll slip a note under the door.
Keep in mind that when they were healthy at the quarterback position with Eli Hallstein earlier in the season, that's when they got off to a great start. No. As soon as he got hurt, second half of the season and didn't play, they lost just about every game. So he was a big time. I think he was a redshirt freshman last year. He might have even been a former Alabama recruit. So he really had a great start to his career until the injury. And Desmond Reed was a transfer from a lower conference who was a fantastic playmaker for them. But he experienced a lot of injuries himself last year, which also hurt. So as long as Holstein and Reed are healthy, they could definitely be a team to keep an eye on.
SMU, the new kids in the block last year in the ACC, they made it to the championship game before they imploded in that game, especially the quarterback, Kevin Jennings, their 3 interceptions, 3 picks, 2 pick sixes, if you will. And that really was game over for SMU in that particular game. Again, number 43 in overall returning production, 8.5 to 1 this year to win this conference. A lot of respect for SMU here this football season here, but I have to wonder, can Jennings recover from that meltdown in the playoff last football season? That's the question I'm going to ask this football season.
Well, just in case, they added Tyler Van Dyke to the team.
From Miami?
Yep. So I think, what is that? What is 8 team in like 4 years? So I think he may only have one more shot. It's interesting that he chose SMU with Jennings there as a starter, but maybe he knows something we don't. That's actually a very tentative spot, considering, like you said, the really poor performance Jennings had in the playoff loss.
Well, that's a great point, Greg. I overlooked the fact that Van Dyke was there. I do know when he was at Miami, he was the most vastly overrated Heisman Trophy candidate that had come down the pike in a long time. He either looks like he's just in a freshman quarterback in quarterback camp, or he lights the scoreboard up. You get one or the other from him. You don't get anything consistently in between. But we'll see whether or not he impresses enough to win that job over there. Stanford Cardinal coming in here 50 to 1 this football season here. Number 26 in overall production ranking. I can't get over how many high rankings this.
And a familiar name as head coach, new head coach.
Yeah, Frank Reich. How about that? Former National Football League quarterback and head coach, if you will. The problem here is that 20 players left the program.
That might be a good thing.
Sorry?
That might be a good thing.
Especially because the offense was horrendous last year. They ranked, I think, in the low 100s in many key offensive categories, and that's where Frank Reich's specialty is.
Greg, are you trying to say addition by subtraction?
100%.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
I like that math. They're taking on the second hardest schedule I should say the ACC has the second hardest schedule amongst all these teams. They're going to face 9 bowl teams is this program here. I don't know if we're going to go with Stanford this year. I just kind of think they made a wrong move personally, hopping into the ACC. They just don't seem to have the feel or whatnot. California, maybe because of their coach, and I'm a little more enamored with them. But I think rock bottom is getting real cozy for Stanford these days, and I don't see them sniffing a bowl game.
Stanford's got an interesting schedule, and maybe we'll learn a little bit. They do open on August 23rd at Hawaii. Then, unlike most programs, they have the following week off when most programs are actually starting their season, and then they go to BYU, probably a little bit of a project at BYU, and then they host Boston College. So with a guy like Frank Reich, who's had some success, and certainly in the NFL as well, we might see this team show some early season improvement, just based upon some of the principles he brings to the program that they'd not had in previous seasons.
Well, if you guys believe in horses bouncing, and I love John Hardoon and the job that Greg and he do together here on Proline TV, handicapping the horse races, a team that has bounce written all over it this year has to be Syracuse. They brought in Fran Brown last year, and what did they do? My goodness. They won 10 football games last year, their best season since 2018. That's terrific. But just 50% of last year's players are back. Just 10 starters overall coming back for this football team this year.
What's the production?
98. I talked about how high everybody else was. They're the bad guy, the low guy inside the conference this year, and they've got a savage-like schedule here. How about they got to go on the road against Clemson, Tennessee, SMU, Miami, and Notre Dame. Now, who's going to get through that?
You're going to lose all those, so you better win the rest.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm talking bounce, big-time bounce for Syracuse this football
Well,
season.
they were very fortunate. Fran Brown is an elite recruiter, which is the reason why he got the job, and he actually did a good job coaching. But really, it was more about his recruiting because he was able to get Kyle McCord from Ohio State to come in there for that 1 year. And he had veteran receivers. He's lost Gadsden. Aronde's now in the NFL at tight end. He lost Pena, who just transferred out. So all of those big receivers he had gone, big-time quarterback gone. So like you said, if there's a bounce in a negative way, which usually bounces are, Syracuse sounds like a good one for you, Mark.
We might find out a little bit about Syracuse if the decline is going to be there. They should get hammered by Tennessee in the opener. Then they have games against home games against Connecticut and then an FCS team, Colgate, the next 2 weeks. Both of those are winnable games. Let's see if Syracuse has to struggle to win those two games, or if they can gain some confidence and win in blowout fashion. Those two games might give us a clue as to how they're going to do in the ACC the rest of the season.
Guys, we've got 6 minutes to get 3 teams in, which is just a little below the average that Greg allowed us.
Okay,
2 minutes.
you
plus.
take it from here, Mark.
Virginia Cavaliers, they got a really nice quarterback in Chandler Morris, but he's really, really well-traveled. He's been with Oklahoma, TCU, and North Texas, but he might fit well here with this program. Number 36 overall in returning production, 16 returning starters coming back, 80-1 in this conference here this football season here. I think Morris will make or break this football team. Last year, after 5 straight bowlless seasons, including a 3-year drought under Tony Elliott, they went all in the transfer portal, had 16 newcomers in a bid to snap the streak here. I think Virginia sits right on the cusp of whether or not they're going to be a bowl team this year.
They open up 13.5 point favorite, but down 12.5 point favorite in Coastal Carolina on the 30th of August.
Wow.
Coastal did pretty good in the Baseball World Series,
Yes,
college,
they did.
but they lost to LSU. That's a big number.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you hit it on the head, Mark. It's up to Chandler Morris. He does have talent. And Tony Elliott, of course, was the former assistant at Clemson. So, he is a good coach who has struggled a little bit, but they made some strides last year. And I think this could be a good year for them. And like you said, it's all up to Chandler Morris.
Well, Morris, guys, he was one of only 35 quarterbacks that were nominated on the Doak Walker Award list last year. That's some pretty nice recognition that he brings in here into this football program here. So if there's a surprise quarterback, and he won't be so much of a surprise, if Virginia improves, it'll largely be because
It's another team that started 4-1 on the season and then lost 6 of their last 7 games. The lone win was at Pittsburgh, which was in the early part of their lengthy losing streak to end the season. So if indeed what you say is correct, they may present some value at the start of the. In fact, that's another thing to look at, Mark, and maybe it sort of goes in relation. Teams that end the season the way that Virginia did, the way that Pitt did, how they start the next season.
Yes, with a vengeance is basically largely what it is, if they have the talent.
Yeah.
And it sounds like both of these football teams have some players that can do just that. Virginia Tech, they stumbled at 6-7 last year. Yes, it was a bowl season, but they lost 24 players to the portal. 5 of them went pro. They're going to have a tough time, I think, rebuilding here. 72nd in overall returning production, number 13 overall in returning starters, 30-1 to win this division here. People might think 30-1 for Virginia Tech looks attractive because they're almost always either a winning team or in every football game they play. But I got to put them right again on the cusp here. I don't know where I'm going to go with Virginia Tech.
A big year for Brent Pry, the head coach. Last year was supposed to be a lot better because it was the second year for the young quarterback, Kyron Drones, who did take a step up, but not the step they were hoping. Tootin, their running back, was drafted by Jacksonville. Excellent running back. They also had some other key players that, like you said, that have either graduated or transferred. So they're not as talented as they were last year. Last year was supposed to be a big year for them. So I think this might be a make or break year for Brent Pry.
Could well be. And, if they're bowling, he's back. If they're not, he's not. I think it comes down to being just that simple. Let's wrap it up with the last team in the ACC alphabetically. That's Wake Forest, the Deacon Demons, number 65 overall in returning production. 12 starters back, 6 on both sides of the ball. and they're a healthy 500-1 to win this conference here. You can forget about that. That's not going to happen. The new head coach here, and Jake Dickert, he did a real nice job with Washington State, took them bowling, 2 bowl wins exactly. So they made a nice coaching hire. There's no question about it. But I think with teams like this, you're facing rebuilding. And in a conference like this, there's a reason they're 500-1. I won't be chasing Wake Forest with a lot of money this year. I can assure you that.
It is interesting.
Particularly because their weakness has been defense the last few years.
Yeah.
It is interesting that Dickert left Washington State for Wake Forest, which a couple of years ago, that would never have happened. I mean, Wake Forest versus Washington State from the Pac-12. Now the Pac-12 is, we know where they're at. So now it's a step up to actually go from one of the least productive, because again, the former coaches at Wake Forest have done a really good job there for the last 20 years. And he just left the program, and so he left it in really good shape. But still, this is not like a superior football program. So it just shows you the state of the old Pac-12, that this was a step up for Dickert.
It will be a step up for him. Coming from a Pac-12 that dissolved for all intents and purposes and now into an established Power 4 conference here. I think it's going to be a struggling year for this football program. Guys, we got it in. We got it in inside the hour, which is our goal, which we're going to do it. Our ATS podcast, we're going to be featuring 1-hour shows coming down the road in the future. We did the ACC today. Next week, we're going to go to the Big 12 conference and tear that conference apart. I've got a lot of nice, interesting stats and facts. I also want to remind our viewers out there that this puppy that
Where's mine?
Huh?
Where's mine?
They're on the way.
Yeah.
We just got them in the office 2 days ago. Okay. So they're all being sorted out. I snuck this copy out. Okay.
Okay.
But if anybody,
the digital version is currently available.
yes, it is. You can download a digital copy and get it instantly. And I sent it to you guys. There'll be an updated digital coming because there were a few mistakes. Charles is a perfectionist, so I'll be sending you a new digital coming out. But nonetheless, you can download the digital right now online at Playbooks.
Oh, by the way, have they been the physical got those corrections in there?
No, physical went to print. Okay.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's small, minor little things like the 2 new kids in the block that are coming.
Delaware, Missouri State.
Missouri State. Yeah, he had the wrong conferences up on that. Just little small minor things like that. But nothing as far as the details that matter. And you got to get your copy of the Playbook Football Preview Guide magazine if you're
Best
serious.
thing out there.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. They're on sale also in Las Vegas at the Gamblers Book Club.
That's why I have, I think, all 31 prior copies.
No, really nice. I thought I might have been the only
Did he pay for them?
Most of them, yes. And most years I actually get 3 copies. One to keep with me all the time, one to keep at home in pristine condition, and one to mark up.
I thought
And,
one.
and by the way, we're going to have some at least
football season,
Hopefully, we'll have at least a couple to give away to our audience. That would be nice.
Yeah,
I have a question.
Yes.
LSU opens at Clemson. I kind of like this game. Tell me about LSU. Are they that strong, Mark?
They're going to be a nice team this year again, Jimmy. Here they always are.
3-point dog to Clemson on the road.
Yeah, that's kind of rare, but
It'll be a good test for both teams. Should be a competitive game.
And they're a dog because Clemson being this #1 ranked team in overall production. That carries a lot of weight. The fact of how well those teams do, and Clemson expected to be this good this year. That'll be a heck of a football game. And we'll tear that down as we get closer and closer to it. Guys, we got to get out of here. I want to thank you guys for joining me on the show. I'm back out of the dungeon. Really looking forward to getting back with you guys for the Big 12 conference next year. So for Jim Feist from Las Vegas, Andy Iskoe, TheLogicalApproach.com, Greg DePalma, our producer extraordinaire on the show, this is Mark Lawrence, reminding you to always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.